Good morning. I'll call to order the council meeting for the Thursday, April the 12th. And roll call, we have all present except Mayor Crombie, Councillor Yanika, and Councillor Starr is ill. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest by any members? Seeing none then, approval of the minutes. Moved by Councillor McFadden, second by Councillor Raz. All in favor? Carried. Approval of the agenda. Councillor Sato.
Thank you. 2 items, Mr. Chairman. First, I would like to add an item under other business with relation to the portable sign charges and the portable sign program. And secondly, when is the appropriate time to move that all of the growth management reports are deferred and not dealt with today? I'd like to see them removed from the agenda to the next meeting. So I think under agenda approval, that would be an appropriate time.
That is.
Okay, so I would move then that they be removed from the agenda and brought back to the next council meeting.
Okay. Would that include the communications as well? Like, do you want all of it?
Everything with
Okay.
relation to that.
Okay, just for clarity, thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Chairman, if I could add that the reason is we didn't get them. I got mine yesterday when my staff printed out my agenda. And we have not had an opportunity to review them and our cities and discuss with our city staff any of the implications in these reports. So it's premature for us to read them or deal with them today.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Palashi.
Mr. Chair, are we going to allow at least staff to give the presentation? No. Why would we not allow staff to give the presentation? And also, why would we not allow a delegate to come and delegate that's already here from the public? I understand that Councillor Sato has an issue with not receiving this in a timely manner. I think we're all in the same boat. But I still was able to read the report, and I'm still able to put my position forward. I also have 3 kids that I take to sporting events and other events that I'm doing, plus I had council yesterday. I don't know why we wouldn't at least allow, you want to defer. Obviously, that's going to be the position of this council today, but I don't know why we wouldn't allow at least staff to give our presentation. Then we're that much ahead when it comes back.
Okay, it's a fair point. I'm going to ask Councillor Sato, because her motion was anything to do with respect to the growth plan, that it be deferred.
Mr. Chairman, I have no problem with the deputant. Personally, I think the deputant will probably end up coming back to the next meeting as well. But since the deputant is here, I have no problem. But I do not feel we should be listening to the staff presentation without having had an opportunity to read and go through the reports. I think it would be meaningless. I would much prefer to have the staff presentation when we are dealing with the reports. So my motion is to remove the reports, the staff presentation, off the agenda and hear the deputation. If the deputant wishes to speak today and not come back when we are debating the issue at the next meeting, I think we would leave it up to the deputant.
So, Mr. Chair, if I still have the floor, is there a possibility that if the deferral was to fall or fail, and could somebody else put a deferral on the floor to defer the reports to next meeting but listen to staff presentation?
I don't know, wonder if we're better to separate it. Like, my suggestion would be that we separate it instead of getting into that situation where we could deal with the motion with removing all the reports, and then if everybody's in agreement, we'll hear the delegation. But with respect to actually the staff presentation, to separate that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I have. Oh, that's good. The list is shrinking. Councillor Parrish.
Well, just on the matter that was just given, often when I read the reports ahead of time and then I listen to the staff, I've got questions prepared, which I won't have the opportunity to do now. So what I will be doing in 2 weeks is asking the staff to come back and do it again. So it's a complete waste of time, their time and our time. I would rather everything be deferred as a package. If the delegation wants to speak today, they'd be foolish because they all want to come back in 2 weeks when we've got some context for what they're saying, but that would be up to them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cook.
Well, I have to agree with Councillor Parrish and Councillor Sato. The point is, being a new member of council, and having a council meeting yesterday, and then all of a sudden getting this report printed off by my executive, I haven't had a chance to look at it. And to hear a delegation, and we'll speak to that later then under this split motion, is that correct? Okay, so I'm supporting the motion as it's presented. Okay.
Okay. We're going to take it in 3 motions then. The first would be to defer all the reports with respect to the growth management. We'll take that, and communications. And that would be a recorded vote. So that's to defer the reports that relate to the growth management that also include the communications. We'll take that as the first motion. Councillor Sprovieri, I have first.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, Frank, I have to be truthful, I haven't had a chance to read the report either. We did have council yesterday, and it was a long day at the city. And when I get home at night, it's really not a good time to go over, these kind of information. And it's really good to read this in the morning when the brain is fresh and that's my state this morning. And my brain is good to absorb things. So to me, it does not do any harm for staff to present to us. So at least when I go away from here and when I read the report.
We're not dealing with that motion right now, so if you want to speak to it at that time, you can. We're just dealing with.
Well, I thought we were dealing with whether we're going to listen to.
No, that's a separate motion. Yeah, it's
Well,
gonna
this
be-
is to defer everything.
This is just, yes. No, this is to defer the reports.
Oh, okay. All
And
right.
the communications that are
Okay.
related to growth management.
Okay.
Councillor Moore.
Okay. I guess this is one of those circumstances where you're going to have to say the same thing 5 times, different ways. So my question is around the delegations. Are you suggesting that we not, as part of this motion, defer the delegations? I just think the delegates need an opportunity to decide, since they are on the printed agenda, as to whether or not they will. So they will be given that opportunity.
Councillor Moore, I'm going to put that forward as a separate motion. They were all included in one motion, but I think for clarity, it's better to separate them.
Okay.
So we'll first deal
I-
with the reports.
I do have
Then we'll
another-
deal with the delegation. Then the third one is the staff presentation.
Gotcha.
So we'll take them as separate motions.
But I do have a follow-up question.
Okay.
And I guess I'm having some difficulty trying to figure out how all these moving pieces fit together. Back in February, we canceled a public meeting on this. Where does it now fit into this?
Okay, I'll ask staff, David, or Jeanette, I guess, yeah, please.
Through the chair. So you're right. The reason we canceled the public meeting was because of the GTA West announcement, because all the assumptions based into our growth management draft ROPA were based on having a highway. So where employment was going, everything. And that's the reports we were preparing to bring to you for this meeting, kind of with that. Then after all the reports were all written, the announcement came out about the draft guidance document on how a municipal comprehensive review needs to be done, which is quite substantially different than how it's been done in the past. So the reports had to be scrapped and rewritten to take that into consideration, because if they pass the guidance document as proposed, it's a pretty big game changer. So we still have the public meeting, or the statutory meeting, on hold, because we still haven't done the full analysis on the GTA announcement. And we want to reply to the guidance document to ask them to change it, because while we agree with the intent, the mechanics of how they're recommending it would mean we actually wouldn't be able to bring a growth, or the entire ROPA, because it would be one big one, to you for another 2 years, at least. Could be up to 3, because there's a whole bunch more work that needs to be done. And I believe we have till 2022 to comply. And I'm seeing nods in the audience, I have my year right. Does that answer your question? So it's still on hold.
It explains why the public meeting is on hold.
Yeah.
When will this come to public meeting? I think for those folks who have attended today, they need to know that.
Yeah. Well, if the province sticks to their guidance document about what's required for an MCR, that it's a big, all-inclusive, one big amendment, then we won't be having a public meeting and bringing an entire ROPA till like 2022 or 2021, in that time frame. Because if we brought something, council could approve it, but it won't meet the provincial requirements, and the province has to approve it.
Okay. I'd like an opportunity, I think, at the appropriate time to have a discussion on that, because I think we know from experience that when we sit and wait for the province, we sit and wait for a very long time. And I would rather have something before them, and I need to understand what the implications are. But I'd like to have something before them that either forces them to ignore it or forces them to deal with it,
So we can,
one way or the other, so.
through the chair, we can bring that type of recommendation from staff on the risks, the pros, et cetera, at the next meeting when we deal with these reports.
Okay, and I would just
Thank you.
add to that, you prepare a motion for council's consideration with respect to the issue that's been raised by Councillor Moore at that time.
Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Shaughnessy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just have a question for staff before we move ahead on this. I did read the reports, and I'm not sure which report. I was trying to quickly go through. We have a commenting period up until, is it May 5th that we have comments that go into the province?
Through the chair, we have until May 7th to provide feedback on the draft guidance document.
Okay, so by deferring this, are we causing you undue stress and harm in taking those comments back to the province? Are we going to end up, you're just going to have to provide the comments and then we endorse it after the fact? How does deferring this affect that commenting period?
Through the chair, well, if we have the discussion and the reports are tabled on April 26th and council endorses the feedback that we're proposing to give, then we still would have time because it's May 7th. If it gets deferred any time further, then we'd have to submit our comments with the caveat that it hasn't been endorsed by council. One of the other options, if things as a package get deferred, there could still be brought forward a separate motion endorsing the comments that we could take forward. But we're okay for the 26th.
We're okay for the 26th so long as we pass it on the 26th.
The staff recommendation or a motion with what the feedback should be.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So the first motion then before you is, as I've said, is to defer the reports related to the growth management, which also include the communications. And that's a recorded vote, please. So that passes, so it's been deferred to April 26th. Now, the second motion is in reference to the delegation pertaining to this matter. Do you want to do the other one? Oh, we can. All right, so this motion then is to either hear a presentation from staff or to defer it on to the April 26th. And that's a recorded vote. Oh, so, Councillor Sprovieri.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. as I was trying to say before, I think it's beneficial to listen to staff. So we have a background, so when we read a report, we can make reference to what we've already heard and see whether what staff has said correlates with what the report says. Because I believe a staff is going to tell us exactly, in a summary, exactly what's in this report. So I would like to have a bit of a background first before I read the report. I think it's beneficial. It gives me an opportunity to understand better when I read the report and having a background. So I would move that we listen to the delegation of staff or presentation.
Yeah, you'll just vote against the motion then. Councillor Sato.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify what my motion was, Mr. Chairman, because you said it was either to defer it or not. My motion is to defer the staff presentation
To the
until
20
you
yeah.
deal with the reports.
Fair point, yeah.
Just wanted it clear.
Oh, actually, I was going to clarify that.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Parrish.
Just asking a procedural question. Are we allowed to debate a deferral? Then why are we doing it?
I've given council that liberty just to,
Well,
for
I would rather
clarification.
you don't give
I'll
us any
stick-
more liberty.
All right, I won't. Damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? Okay. I know, you lost. All right. So the motion is to defer the staff presentation to April 26th. Recorded vote, please. And that passes. Now, the final motion with respect to this issue is to hear the delegation as listed today, or to defer. I do too, but Mr. Given, are you in the audience, sir? There he is. Yeah, if you could just come down to the mic. Did you wish to make a deputation today? Based on the discussion that's
Mr.
occurred?
Chairman, if I could just get clarification, if I make a deputation today, my understanding is that I can't at the next meeting?
Well, according to the procedure, no. It's either today or in the future.
So it's my choice?
Correct. Yeah. We're putting it all in your hands.
Mr. Chairman, I would prefer to make the presentation today. I think, as Councillor Spalvieri has indicated, it would be helpful for all of you to understand the way this situation has arisen. It'll give the context for reading the staff report when you do get around to it.
Okay, fair enough. And you're listed as the fourth delegation today, so we'll call you up at the
Thank you.
appropriate time. All right. So we don't need to vote on that, do we? No. Councillor Miles.
And Mr. Chairman, in regards to the delegate only being heard once, the delegation can come and speak to the issue. He may have other things to say in regards to the issue. Like once the staff reports come out and there's recommendations from the other municipalities, I've never heard us say that you can only come as a delegation to speak to an issue once.
Well, I'm going to ask the clerk to clarify that because that's my understanding of the procedure bylaw.
The new procedure bylaw did put a restriction in that a delegate would speak on the same matter only once per year. But council can absolutely pass a motion to say that they can direct that a delegate can come back a second time.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would put a motion on the floor then to waive the rules of procedure in this matter so that Mr. Given can be heard today, and then can also submit a request for a delegation at the next meeting.
I'll second that.
All right. So moved. I still have a list. Is it with,
Are there questions with respect to that?
yeah, are there?
That's the motion on the floor, yeah.
Yeah, we have a motion on the floor, so are these, the councillors that are listed here to speak, or is it in relation to this motion?
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Moore?
If Councillor Miles hadn't moved a motion to suspend the rules of procedure, I was going to do it. You know, through no fault of the delegates today, this took on a life of its own. And so Councillor Miles is absolutely correct. There could be something on April the 26th that they wish to further comment on. And I think they should be given that opportunity. Thank you.
Councillor Shaughnessy, or Gibson, sorry, Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to ask that if the delegation is going to speak today, that we limit the discussion to clarification, that you not give us any lenience on that, please.
That's also
As
the
in
rules and the procedure bylaw.
Yeah, well, judging from how you gave us lenience last
Yeah,
time,
okay, fair
I want to
enough.
make it clear, we
All right.
should not be going into debate.
I was intending to do that, so
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Councillor Shaughnessy.
I just looked up his delegation because I wasn't quite sure how he phrased it, but he did say 8.1 to 8.5, and I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. If he had said 8.1 or 8.2, it wouldn't stop him from coming back and delegating to the others. So, but he does actually speak to all of them on the agenda.
Yeah, no, Councillor Miles' motion is very appropriate. It is. So recorded vote on this, please. And is it 2/3 it needs?
2/3.
Yeah, it needs 2/3. So the motion passes and he'll be invited back
If he chooses.
if he chooses. Thank you.
So all of that to say approval of the agenda as amended.
Okay. Councillor Parrish, would you move then the approval of the agenda as amended? And with the addition to under other business on the portable signs? And you'd second that, Councillor Sato? All in favor then? Carried. We're going to bring forward the consent agenda then, as was suggested at the last council meeting. So we'll go through. Growth management has been deferred, so items related to public works, 10.1. Is that, anyone want to hold any of these down? Let me know. 10.1, consent. 10.2, consent. 10.3, so 10.3 hold. Items related to health then. There's one communication. Consent. Items related to human services, 14.1. Consent, 15.1. Consent, 15.2. Consent. Items related to enterprise programs and services, 16.1. Consent. 16.2 is a presentation. 16.3. Consent. 16.4. Consent. 16.5. Consent. 16.6. Consent. 16.7. Do you want to hold that? Okay. 16.8, consent. Two communications, 17.1, consent. 17.2, consent. And then under other business, we have the portable sign issue. And that's the consent agenda. So, Councillor Raz, would you be prepared to move that then? Oh, Councillor Sato first.
After the vote. Sorry,
Sorry?
I'll speak after the vote.
Okay. So, Councillor Raz, would you move? Yes. Okay. And Councillor Palacios would second that, the consent agenda? All in favor? Or no, sorry, recorded vote. No?
Yes.
Yeah. The motion passes. Thank you. Councillor Sato.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I wonder if, before we go ahead with the council meeting, if you could speak to the reason why many of us are wearing our hockey jerseys today, and perhaps do a very short moment of silence and a tribute to those that lost their lives in Humboldt.
Okay, no, that's very appropriate. I know our hearts go out to that community for sure, and today's been asked to recognize and support of the tragedy that choose a sport, wear a sweater that indicates a sport to support certainly the town of Humboldt and the team. So many of you have chosen to do that. I very much appreciate that. And I think it would be also appropriate at this time to have a moment of silence with respect to them. Thank you. Mayor Crombie.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chair. We did so as well yesterday in Mississauga. I think hockey is that one sport that binds our country. Really runs through each of our communities right across every province. And as a parent, I know that I was deeply affected when I heard about the death of the 14 and now 15, 16, two more, have succumbed to their injuries. So my heart goes out to all the victims, their families, their teams over in Humboldt, Saskatchewan, and I know I speak for my council and all the people of Mississauga as well. We lit our clock tower green and gold this weekend. We have our flags at half-mast, and we too did the moment of silence yesterday. And what I wanted to suggest, actually, that so many of us did wear our jerseys today as National Jersey Day as a tribute to Humboldt. Maybe we could do a little team photo as well, and I have an extra jersey if someone else wants to put one on. Perfect, if we can, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you. Mayor Thompson.
I echo Mayor Crombie's comments, and the people of Humboldt, even the hockey team that did survive, their lives will be changed forever. And I think it's a reality, like decisions that we make, especially dealing with traffic and everything. This has been an ongoing intersection which has had a lot of problems over the years, and when we don't deal with the issues and make hard decisions, this is what you never want to see. So I think it's a lesson for all of us as we go forward, learning from this. And again, we're doing something at 10 to 4 today at the town hall with showing support with everybody. We're going to gather at the flagpole with the everybody wearing their jerseys as well. So I think it's important that all municipalities stand up and be identified. One thing I also want to say is we lost another person early Sunday morning, and that was Bill Ray, the reporter where Gary Koselleck is sitting. That man has covered Caledon for many years. He served as a journalist. If it wasn't for King Township, it was for Caledon. And he sat in that seat all the time, covered the region very, very well. Passed away in his sleep at the age of 60. And we were talking about Humboldt at 8:15 the night before. So it was a real shock to me that he passed away at a young age of 60. But I just wanted to recognize that Bill has served the community extremely well, and we'll definitely miss him.
And I think too, in relation to the Humboldt situation, you know, it really brings home how quickly a tragedy can happen. And I know many of us have probably traveled on a bus to a sporting event, or certainly had friends or family, or have coached like I have, and just it reflects back to the teams that you've coached and how quickly something could have even happened to them on our travels. So our hearts do go out to the community for sure. Thank you. That brings us to, Madam Mayor.
Wonder if we could take a team photo, everyone, but the people in the jerseys out front, so we can tweet it out, our support as a
Yeah,
as
if you'd like to
council.
do that now,
Like
we
to.
could.
Thank you.
That's appropriate. Go ahead. Hopefully got somebody with a camera. All right, delegations. Michael Govea, Research Development Manager, Boys and Girls Club of Peel. If you come forward with your delegation, please.
Well, good morning, Chair. Good morning, Council, City staff, regional staff. Thank you for providing us the opportunity to be here today. Before we get started, as this is our first opportunity to speak before Council, I was wondering if I can get a slight extension on our time, if anyone would put that forward. Thank you. Again, it's only probably a couple minutes. So again, my name is Michael, Boys and Girls Club of Peel. Today I'm with our Program Director, Abby De Silva, and our Executive Director, Jim Turner. Reason for coming today is, again, just to share information on who we are as the Boys and Girls, since this is our first opportunity to present to you, but also then speak to and offer suggestions and hopefully have a brief conversation on some on a matter that's very important to us regarding collaboration around two-tier government and how it could benefit and work, in our opinion, maybe a little bit better throughout the region of Peel, as it does with a lot of our other organizations through the Boys and Girls, for example, in Durham, in the Halton region, and in York. So to get started, Abby is just going to introduce a little bit who we are, where we've come from, and where we'd like to go as it is with the Boys and Girls and through our relationship with the region of Peel.
Good morning. My name is Abby De Silva, and I'm the program director with the Boys and Girls Club of Peel. We are a children, youth, and family service agency that runs programs here in the region of Peel. Anyone who's familiar with Boys and Girls Clubs we operate our club a little bit different. In the city of Toronto, they have 8 separate clubs, whereas in Peel, we have one Boys and Girls Club that runs outreach programs throughout Brampton, Mississauga, and now in Caledon. What do our programs look like? As I said, we offer programs for children and youth. That includes after-school programs that provides a safe place for children to go in those critical after-school hours. Through those programs, we provide homework support and a healthy snack. We also provide programs where we introduce physical literacy and youth leadership. Many of the part-time staff and volunteers that actually run the programs that we offer in Peel were at one time members of the programs. They start when they're 6 years old. They attend the after-school programs and the summer programs. They become mentors. They attend our leadership programs and then become role models within their neighborhoods to develop future leaders. One of the other things we do is our summer activity centers. So we have summer activity centers that again provide places, safe places for children and youth to attend throughout Peel. What we find is with a lot of our members, there are barriers to participation. And some of those barriers are cost. We have a lot of members that come from high-risk communities that just can't afford to pay for programs. So most of our programs are free. We offer a very low membership, but other than that, it's free to attend the programs. It's free to be a part of the trips and the activities that we run. The other piece is transportation. A lot of our members have challenges in transportation and actually getting to the program. If you have a single parent and they want to get their child to a program, they're taking all of the kids, including the ones in the baby carriage, on the bus to transport them to the program. So what we've done is we have wonderful community partners. We have an amazing community partnership with Peel Living, where we have been able to offer our programs within the community rooms of Peel Living buildings. So it's right there, coming down the elevator, and the program is right in their neighborhood. And that's been an important piece in terms of developing the leaders within those communities. One of the other programs that we've been able to partner with Peel Living on is one that we call Youth on a Roll. And it's one that I'm very proud of because what we do is we actually hire youth and provide employment programs to youth from Peel Living communities that have had some barriers to employment. Sometimes it's obtaining employment. A lot of them, it's keeping employment because they're still in the process of learning what it means to be a good employee. And so we work with Peel Living to hire the youth, but also to train them. And then they go into seniors units and paint seniors units for those seniors that live within the Peel Living haven't been able to get their units. And it's just a wonderful opportunity to have intergenerational programming. And the seniors have been just amazing because they actually feed the youth, so they gain weight over the summer. But it's a great opportunity for them to work together. We've also developed wonderful partnerships with the municipality. We are now offering program in Caledon, which has been amazing. We also look forward to being able to partner with the Malton Youth Hub, the up-and-coming Malton Youth Hub, in expanding our programs within Malton to youth as well. And I think that's the piece that makes us very unique in terms of club, is the fact that we do all of our programs on an outreach basis. And from a pride perspective, youth in Peel have been sitting on the Provincial Youth Council for Boys and Girls Clubs and have been providing leadership provincially to youth across Ontario. Thank you for your time.
So just to add on a little bit what Abby is just keeping conscious of the time is we're very happy with the conversations and relationships that we have with the region and the individual municipalities. We're at that point where we're not only for us, but we see not-for-profits being at that point where there's opportunity to move forward and to do even more in the community. And just through discussions over the past months with other clubs, with the Boys and Girls Canada, we've learned great information on relationships that they've had with their individual municipalities and the regions that they've worked in. So the second part, which Jim's going to talk to, is just how can we work together better, not just us as boys and girls, but all not-for-profits with the region and municipalities on bringing a better collaboration through the two-tier government process aspect of how that is. And maybe it's because we don't have a clear understanding how it is, just to find out from yourselves. How does it work more in Peel compared to the other regions? The one thing we will be asking at, and hopefully someone can put a motion forward, is if a takeaway to staff, maybe to do a bit of research and insight on how the other regions work with their not-for-profits. That'd be something that we'd love to see if possible.
Thank you very much. As the executive director of Peel, I go to conventions with all the Boys and Girls Clubs of Canada that are all in different communities and everything else like that. Peel is recognized as a region that is probably one of the top in Canada. In Mississauga, the amount of corporate sponsors that are there, we have an excellent relationship with that. However, we need some assistance. And some examples of what I'm referring to is, for example, in Durham region, the region contributes $112,000 to the local Boys and Girls Club in Durham. And that's contributed between Ajax, Whitby, and Oshawa. In Niagara region, they provided the Boys and Girls Club with 17,000 square feet of space. They also provide 50% of access to a mobile cruiser. They presented $198,000 in a community grant from the city of Mississauga.
Niagara.
From the city of Niagara. In addition to the regional contributions of $200,000 contributed between St. Catharines, Niagara-on-the-Lake, Fort Erie, and Port Colborne. In London, city gave them a building that includes a 6-lane swimming pool. City does all the maintenance, and there are no charge of any kind onto the club. In the town of Lindsay, a fund established through Utilities Commission that generates about $100,000 per year. City of Kawartha, the annual community grant of $35,000. In 2016, council gave the club $435,000 to build their own facility. In the town of Midland, $88,000 for a community grant. In Peel, we rent the facility for our office through Brampton. And we are the only club in Canada that pays taxes on our rental thing. We do receive, and we are very happy to receive, a sustainability grant from the region. However, our goal and the requirement of the community is they want us to grow. They want us to come to that community. The programs that we're offering, we have waiting lists for. The goal of this club is to reduce those waiting lists and to open up more programs for more families and for more kids. So I just thought that I just wanted to raise that issue with you. And thank you for the support you've been giving us. And would seriously like to, anything that we can do to get further support, we'd appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I have a list of councillors. Just to remind council that under the new procedure bylaw, with respect to the delegation, it's for questions of clarity only, for clarification. Council may wish to, if they want to refer an issue, they could move a motion or present a motion of referral for a staff report to come back. And that's just to make it clear with respect to the procedure bylaw. So I have Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you, Chair Dale, for stealing my thunder, but It's exactly that I will be doing in consultation with Commissioner Sheehy. So I'd like to move a motion to refer the presentation to staff. I also like to move a motion to receive the delegation. Also, I am suspect as being part of the board of directors of this organization, which first I'd like to recognize these three individuals who are the passion that they bring to their work, the work that they do. I came across the Boys and Girls Club just simply picking up my daughter a couple years ago at her local school, and you saw these group of children in their T-shirts with, I guess, supervisors who were going to take them to one of the after-school programs, and I was amazed to see all these kids.
Councilman Medeiros, with respect, I appreciate that, but it's out of
Sure,
order.
thank you. Essentially, can you just speak to the challenge that you have in the two-tier system? Because, for example, you talked about the experience with the grants program at the City of Brampton, and that you have a Brampton address, but there were some challenges when you're serving community in Mississauga. However, because you did not have an address there, the City of Mississauga deemed that there wasn't, you didn't qualify for grant. Can you speak to that?
So from my understanding through talking with, through you, Chair, through conversations with the staff in Mississauga, the first point was not having a Mississauga address is deemed as a point against it. There might have been other criteria. We haven't had the chance to sit down with staff to look at what the other criteria was. Thankfully, now we do have a Mississauga address, so we've been able to put forward grants using that address. As an organization that represents all of Peel, we're limited to where our home base can be. So a physical address shouldn't be a barrier to being able to provide for a grant through any of the municipalities. You know, we've just returned to Caledon, just use Caledon as an example, back in November, and not that anyone else hasn't been great, but the relationship with Caledon, right off the bat, they came forward with us and said, here's a grant we'd like you to apply for because we know that's going to benefit the program in which you're running, which was fantastic through Mayor Thompson's staff. But getting back to the Mississauga, we believe we've solved that matter now. It was frustrating at the time, not going to lie. That's part of why we need a better understanding and clarity around how the two-tier works. Is that something that could have been funneled through the region as a regional entity that could have resolved that matter? That's the answers we're hoping to find.
Thank you, and through the chair, and you identified there is a growing need, so certainly, hopefully, staff will provide you that clarity that you look for. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your delegation. I'm happy to second, if you need a seconder on the motion, that it goes back to staff and a report comes forward. Michael, you talked about, or somebody spoke about the wait list. Are you able to break down where the wait list is in terms of each municipality?
Chair, I can say that there is, at this point, we're fairly new to Caledon, so there isn't quite the wait list in Caledon. However, I can say that in our Brampton program and in our Mississauga programs, there is a wait list. We have a program that's offered at Oak Ridge Public School, for instance, in Mississauga, and it's a very, very high-need community, as well as the kids have a lot of needs as well, and we have constantly having parents ask if they can have their children attend the program. But for safety reasons and to have a safe child to staff ratio, we are not able to accept more children, and so they end up on a waiting list. But it's a waiting list that grows because we just don't have the resources to add the extra staff so that we can accept more children. In that particular case, we work with we have a wonderful partnership with the school, and they allow us to use their gym. It's not a space issue, it's a ratio issue. And we have similar issues in Brampton.
Okay, actually, you answered one of my questions was with the school boards, because you talked about collaboration. It's good to know that they're participating. As you know, that we have a youth center. I'm quite involved with the youth center in Bolton. And Michael, I know that you've spoken to our chair of that board, and if it helps, and you're looking, because we do have volunteers. It's run by volunteers. It's funded by donations, the space was given to us. So if you do find that some of your programs where you may not have the ratio in terms of supervisors per whatever the number is of children, we're happy to step up and help out as well, because we do have volunteers. We have a programming committee, and we're happy to do that. So I will put that out there to you, and you can certainly reach out to the chair of the committee or myself.
And we definitely appreciate it. That's what we are about. We don't want to be seen as the organization that's coming hand in hand all the time, asking. It has to be a true collaboration between the municipalities and the region. At the end of the day, we're servicing the same families. We're helping the same youth, the same children. There's no reason why we can't take what's good from boys and girls, what's good already in the regions and the municipalities, and find a way to mesh it together so it serves the same
Well, I
purpose.
think the work you're doing is great, and I offer that up to you, that in case you need that resource, you can certainly tap into it from us. And we were very fortunate to have some computers
Councillor
given to
Groves,
us.
you're-
Thank you, yeah. One question, so
All right.
we have a workstation as well, so any of your, the children that you work with, are they requiring like a workstation, use of computers and things like that?
As we continue to expand into our fall program, our after-school program, that is something we definitely would like to have further conversation on, and we can
We
definitely
were
take advantage of
fortunate
that.
to be given some computers, so we have a workstation that we can offer to you as well. Thank you.
Councillor Sprovieri.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the presentation. I do support the staff report, and perhaps you can answer what I'd like to know, or staff can report it to us. For instance, how many children do you provide your service to in Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon, the number of children presently? Who qualifies to get into your program? And how much you're getting funding from Peel Region presently, and whether these other cities and regions that you mentioned, whether they're yearly funding or whether they're one-time funding. So all that information can perhaps be brought back to us in the report, and also, yeah, that's pretty well. I'd like to know how many children you're providing the service, what's your goal, and who is eligible for accessing the programs, whether it's children from single parents, children from or from families or whatever, or whether they be children from low-income families, and all that information. Okay?
Councillor Sprovieri, we can take that as direction to come back with in the report. Thanks.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, so because it will come through the research that your staff does, but just to give you a quick overall view, last year we helped 926 youth. When you factor in our holiday hamper program that we do at Christmas time, it was roughly about 1,200 children, about 400 families we were able to assist. We obviously, our focus is in the low-income, high-risk areas, but the biggest conception that we have is that you have to be in a situation where you can't afford. We're open to any child. If there's a child or family out there that needs a service that we offer, that we can provide to them, we're gonna include them in it. We're not limiting who has access to our program and services. They're accessible to anyone. And as we grow our partnership with all of you, we would hope to expand that even more.
Well, and that's the other point I was trying to remember was types of programs you provide to the youth, the children. That could be brought back to the report also.
Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. First, take a motion of receipt of the delegation, moved by Councillor Madero, seconded by Councillor Groves. All in favor of receipt? And the second motion was with respect to referring the items that have been raised with respect to this issue and the concerns that were raised by, or the questions that were raised by Councillor Sprovieri as well, to be included in that. And it's requires a recorded vote, I believe. And that's been moved by Councillor Madero, seconded by Councillor Groves. And that carries. Thank you very much for your delegation. Certainly, we very much appreciate the support that you give to many of our children and youth across the region.
Thank you very much to everyone for having us.
Before I call on the next delegate, I understand that, Jeanette, you had a comment you wish to make? This is on the holiday shopping bylaw.
Chair, to the chair, to members of council. Yeah, just to let council know that from council direction last year, we have been doing some public consultation on the Retail Business Holiday Act. The province passed legislation in December that allows municipalities to put their own bylaw forward on what they want to do around retail holiday businesses. And so we're planning on bringing a report forward at the beginning of June with a recommended bylaw based on all the input. We're still in the process of analyzing it all.
Thank you for that. Sir?
There are also delegations listed on the next few members of council.
Oh.
Next few council meetings.
Yeah, my understanding that there's been a request for delegations on the next 3 council meetings, just for council's consideration. Tammy Laporte, retail worker, regarding the holiday shopping bylaw and the region appeal. Tammy, if you'd come forward. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Good morning, and thank you for letting me speak, Chairman, councilors, and staff. My name is Tammy Laporte, and today I come before you to discuss the proposed changes to the holiday shopping bylaw, which could affect 60,000 retail workers across Peel Region. As you are aware, there are 9 statutory holidays, and currently most retail workers across Peel Region do not work them. These are days workers appreciate, days where workers can rest and spend some quality time with their family and friends. These are 9 days that are now in question, which you as regional councillors must decide if the holiday shopping bylaw will remain the same or if changes will be made. I truly believe it should be left as is, with most retail stores remaining closed. I'm a single mom, and I have worked in retail for 20 years in a grocery store. Working in the grocery business is difficult, especially as a single parent. Wages are low and schedules change week to week. Some nights I work till 10, and I work at least 3 Saturdays a month. This makes precious time with my son extremely limited. Many retail workers are in the same or similar positions, but one thing we can count on are our 9 statutory holidays. These are days we don't have to stress about where to find childcare. These are days that we know we are going to have a full day of quality time with our families and friends. These are days that we've worked hard all year for, and we've earned them. These are days that we are not willing to give up. And these are days that you are assured to be sitting with your family, enjoying quality time, and we should be too. Over the past several months, I have spoken with many coworkers, customers, shop managers, and owners and retail workers about the possibility of Peel Region retail stores being open 365 days a year, and the overwhelming response is in disagreement. No one wants to work, and no one believes that retail stores that sell clothing or groceries are that much of an essential service that they should have their doors open on holidays. All of us are in agreement that we need the precious time with our families and friends and some downtime for rest. During these discussions, we talked about the laws to protect workers and how workers have the right to refuse work on holidays. However, we are all aware of how many companies won't follow those laws. Workers will be coerced and bullied, and many people who either don't know their rights or are too afraid of retaliation won't speak up, and they are the ones who will be stuck working against their will. These are the most vulnerable workers. The new Canadians, the workers who will be threatened with hour losses in the future if they don't work the holidays, the young workers who have not found their voices to speak up against their employer. These are the workers that we need to protect the most. To keep a retail store open on the holiday, many employees will be affected. For example, in a grocery store, you will need employees to prepare the fresh foods in all the departments, butchers, bakers, employees to serve the customers, stockers, cashiers, customer service people, as well as management. We are talking many workers in every store. The bylaw should remain for its intended purpose to allow restaurants and convenience stores and essential pharmacy services to be open. I know many of you are probably thinking it's only 9 days. You're right, it is only 9 days. 9 days is not nearly enough for our families. Only 9 days that we can get together through our hectic lives and work schedules. Only 9 days that some people get to be with their loved ones. We have lost Sunday dinners, Sunday family days for 7-day work weeks for us, the precarious workers. and now workers across Peel Region are in jeopardy of losing their only 9 days for 365 days a year shopping. I wholeheartedly believe that this is going to affect so many families who already have lost so much precious time. Thank you for listening to me. I hope you heard me, and please ensure retail workers keep the 9 statutory holidays and ensure some quality family time.
Thank you, Tammy. If you just stay in place of Councilor Medeiros.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for your delegation. You talked about the Sunday, because when they started opening on Sundays, there was this, I guess, message out there that it would create more employment and allow for especially those part-time workers, those students who wanted to pick up more hours. But I know that through some of my constituents and so on, what they've shared with me is that they actually didn't really happen, and what they've seen is that actually full-time workers who were usually Monday to Friday, because of schedule and so on, have had to face that challenge of working on the Sundays. Can you speak to that? Is that correct? Or
So before Sundays used to be voluntary, and it was also a premium shift, premium paid. Over the years, it's been lost, even whether it's non-union or union shops have lost that. Now it's a regular work week. I know I'm a full-timer, and I just made the cutoff. So if I didn't make the cutoff, I'd be working 6 days a week instead of 5. So 37 plus whatever hours they choose to give on a Sunday.
so through sorry to interrupt you. Through the chair, so when you talk about losing the premium pay, you're not getting extra time then? You're not getting extra for the Sunday work?
Under my contract, I make an extra, I think it's $1.60 an hour. Under the new contracts, no, it's normal pay.
Wow.
And no option to say no to Sundays.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your delegation. If you'd
Thank you.
move receipt of the delegation, Councilor Medeiros, second by Councilor Miles. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen Loeb, retail store bookkeeper, regarding the holiday shopping bylaw. If you'd be kind enough to come forward. You have 5 minutes for your delegation.
Good morning. My name is Karen Lobb, and I lived in Mississauga for the better part of 50 years. For half of those years, I have worked in Mississauga as a retail worker. I watched as we started opening up for Sunday shopping and staying open later at night. Sunday started as a volunteer day and were stipulated as such in our contract. However, as time went on, our new hires, Sundays became a regular part of the work week. I realize that we get overtime for these stat holiday openings. I am concerned that at some point the retail worker will be coerced into working them. I'm also concerned that in the future, stats will go the way of Sundays and become a regular part of the work week, leaving the worker no choice. It will become a tremendous issue for the workers who have children in daycares, as they are closed on stat holidays. In the daycares, if the daycares do open on stats, they would have to charge a larger fee to compensate their workers, therefore costing more for the parent and negating the amount earned for working. Another downside is a small business owner like the mom and pop markets. Right now, they can open and compete as the chains are closed. How does that affect their bottom line? If we open the chains, will this not decrease the customer base, since all these people would be working and not able to spend their money? Last but certainly not least is the loss of family time. In the world we live in now, everyone is busy, both our kids and ourselves. Social media and texting has impeded the art of conversation, and one-on-one interaction is less commonplace. With these 9 stats, like Family Day, Christmas, and more, we can interact and actually have a conversation. We can sit down for dinner at the table, across from each other, face to face. We can take road trips, go to events, and make memories that will last a lifetime. We as retail workers deserve to have these days to enjoy with our families and take time to breathe, as do you. The corporations, as well as yourselves, won't be affected by opening up the stats. We will. If you are not careful, eventually the stats could disappear for you as well. This could become the norm. After all, we have to work them, why shouldn't you? I urge you to think long and hard before you cast your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Raz.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Karen and Deb and to Tammy. I know that you're not, this is probably out of your
No,
comfort
big
zone.
time.
But you did a good job. And I just want to say thank you for putting a face to what some of the issues are. It's not just about whether or not companies have the right or the ability to open on those days. But there are ramifications that we may not be fully aware of. So I do appreciate you coming today. And I think I've shared the story, maybe not in council before, but I know.
I'm just entertaining questions for clarification as per the procedure
So say,
bylaw.
did you hear this story?
I will save it for the debate, but I just want to thank you for coming today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and over here.
Where? Oh, sorry.
Thank you for coming. Can you clarify who you're representing? Because both speakers are speaking like it's yourself, but I know you represent a lot of union workers.
Yes.
Can you,
We're
most of us
members-
know that here, but maybe the media and the people listening at home don't. Can you tell us who you represent? And how many?
Unifor. Our union is Unifor.
And the
Yeah,
numbers?
Local 414 is our local.
And how many employees roughly
Do we have in the union?
that are working in the retail that it affects?
Justin Peel?
Well, that would be a good start, yeah.
Lori?
So Unifor Local 414.
If you could come down to the,
Are we taking
speak
over?
through the microphone, thanks.
That's okay. I think it's important that people don't think you're just talking for yourselves. You're representing a lot of people here.
So Unifor Local 414 represents just strictly retail workers in Ontario. We represent on average about 13,000 retail workers across the entire province. In Peel Region, it's about 8,000 employees.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Parrish.
I don't have a question for the delegation, although I sympathize intensively with them. I have a question for staff. Before this report comes forward, and I don't know if I'm asking something that's possible, as our population increases, one would assume sales will increase proportionately. On the days that stores are open, and we've done a few approvals on a local basis, is there any way of testing to see if they're actually getting more money out of it? Is the same amount of money being spent over 7 days that would be normally spent over 6 days? Is there any way of testing that? You could answer that.
Can I just share? We've been involved in this for quite a while, and we have heard there was, now if you want specifics, I'd have to look it up for you, but it's not making them any more money, because I don't have more money. When a day comes that I have, it's money, you're absolutely right, the money is just being spread over more days. So a lot of the small businesses don't even want to open, because now they have to pay staff, they have to pay electricity, they have to pay and overtime for the people who are there. So really, it's just the competition that's keeping them open. They would prefer, and we speak to all of them, as many as we can, they would prefer to be closed. If this happens, if they change the bylaw, there are going to be a lot of stores that would prefer to be closed that will open out of pressure and the competition.
Councillor Parrish, I'm going to ask David to respond as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, Councillor Parrish, it's a very important question. What we'll do as staff is do the research, do a full literature research on this, looking at all jurisdictions, not just Peel, to see if there's any empirical evidence on how opening on holidays and Sundays affects the overall distribution of sales.
Okay, thank you very much. I suspect what our delegation has told us is true, but I'd love to see you bring us the facts so you can be armed as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Yanika.
Thank you. I want to thank Karen for coming today, and I think you made a very important point. First of all, to Councillor Parrish's point, and going back to retail Sunday shopping, all the data seem to indicate just because I'm shopping on a seventh day, I don't eat more and I don't have more disposable income. So I think all the data bears out what you've said. But Karen, I was interested in something that you said when the region put on the open house. I was one of the councillors that attended. And you said something that I hoped would come up during the meeting. I spent 8 years as a grocery clerk at Tweed for my university. Back in the day, they were delighted to have us part-timers, and so were the full-timers. In fact, some of the full-timers would seek out people like me. Andy, will you take my shift? Because the staff like you, so to speak. But you've said something very important, I think. Am I correct? And this is my question. Is the fear not that I'll be forced to work, or Sundays are going to become like regular days, et cetera. I believe, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you've touched upon it. What the real fear is, the full-time worker's job will really become more part-time. They will take advantage of more precarious workers and make you precarious workers. Because fundamentally, I wasn't a precarious worker. I was a student who lived with mom and dad.
Councillor Niker, you
But
asking or
that's my question, because
answering?
it didn't come up at the public meeting, but I think you've spoken to the real concern, which is, we think they're going to turn us all into precarious workers by bleeding out what the whole work
Councillor
week is.
Niker, your question?
That's my question.
Okay. Odd question.
Yeah.
Jeez.
But she
You guys
touched
are
upon
having
it.
fun.
Could be- that-
Count,
yes,
or
that-
Mayor Crombie.
No, she was,
Oh, sorry, did you,
Yes,
do you want to?
that is an issue that we have a serious.
we tried to get that at the meeting, and I appreciate you
Thank
making
you.
it clear. Thank you.
Mayor Crombie.
Councillor Parrish had already asked my question as well, but I just wanted to sympathize and say that I grew up in that era where everything was closed on Sunday and banks closed at 5
Have
p.m.
you a question?
I'm getting there.
All right.
This is the preamble. And life was okay. It was smaller and there was more family time. The question I wanted to ask, and then make one more comment, was we have been issuing approvals for retail shopping on stat holidays in tourist zones, and have those impeded on you as well as they bled? Do you see any do you see any change in sales as though those folks shop in the tourist zones on those stat holidays?
We see some changes, but actually on the, when we're open on the next day, when we close today, we actually are busier.
Or busier?
So a lot of people
interesting.
don't really take advantage
don't
of the
take
Sunday,
advantage of-
especially in a grocery store. I
Right.
mean, you can get your food unless you really didn't go out of your way. Most people stock up and get their food, so we tend to be busy before and after the closings.
And some of the retail that we have given the approvals for have been more cultural, of different cultures, and, has that impacted on you in any
Can
way?
I just add that something that we've heard quite a bit also is these tourist designated
Destinations.
areas, such as, for example, the Eaton Center.
Mhm.
When you see those pictures people are just jammed in there, they're not all shopping. It's just somewhere to go.
Somewhere to go.
And a lot of times, those stores are
Something to do.
empty. We've talked to the shop owners, and people have to work on those days, and they said nobody's shopping.
Right.
It's just somewhere to go and hang out for the day.
Right, so they want family activity, they want activity, so we just have to
They need somewhere to
redirect
go.
them somewhere else. And
Absolutely.
a lot of this has just been for convenience.
So people are having to work on a day that they could have with their family or just relax, just so people can hang out.
There's nothing sacred anymore. We have 9 days a year.
Quite sad.
Yeah, so I think most of us
why we're
hear
here.
you, we listen, we're listening. That
Yeah.
There are 9 days a year that should remain statutory and
That's all we
closed down
want.
at a minimum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Miles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I'm over here.
Where? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I'm not used to this, sorry.
It's a big circle.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank you very much for coming here and also for reaching out to us as individuals. I know I do have a meeting time set up, I think, in the next week to meet with representatives. And because I have to ask questions, I'm going to say, did you know that Mayor Jeffrey and Mayor Crombie and I attended International Women's Day, which was part of Unifor's recognition of women in the workforce.
Very good.
And I also wanted to ask, did you know that you actually donated $10,000 to Wellspring Chinguacousy, which is supporting many, many individuals in our community experiencing cancer? So I just wanted to thank you for doing that through questions.
We'll pass that on.
Did you know how much we appreciate it?
Yes, thank you.
It was a majority vote that established the new procedure bylaw. Just remind council. No more on my list. Well, thank you very much, ladies, for
Thank you
coming
very much.
forward. Our next delegate is Don Given, planner, Malone Given Persons, on behalf of Mayfield West Phase 2 landowners in relation to the growth management study. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council. You have a letter that I prepared that I hope you'll take away and review in anticipation of the meeting that you'll have in the next 2 weeks. I'm going to summarize what's in the letter, try to keep it as simple as possible, but it is a complicated history that we're dealing with here that even I at times get very confused about how we got to where we are today. But I'm going to try. So the area that we are talking about, Mayfield West 2, Stage 1, is what you see in the dark red area. That is an area that has already been approved for development. What happened along the way, though, is that the dark red line used to be the line at the top of the screen, which is the logical edge of the community. It includes Shinkuzi and the valley lands for the Etobicoke Creek. Those lands are not approved. And it's what we call plan by numbers that caused this. When the growth plan came out, it required us to achieve certain densities as we moved forward to accommodate new greenfield growth. And in doing so, it meant that if you ran out of numbers, and the numbers came from the region who got them from the province, you couldn't go any further. And lines got drawn. And in this case, they got drawn through cornfields, through hayfields. There's no logic to them. And what we always understood through this process is, don't worry. The next round of growth, you'll catch up. So here's the sad story. We have about 200 hectares in the area called Mayfield West, Stage 1. It's planned to accommodate about 10,000 people, 3,000 jobs. When that area was first contemplated, the population that was being allocated was in around the same amount of jobs. But other parts of the region were looking at what they were doing, and along the way, the original application that was made to the region to expand the boundaries into this area that would include the Etobicoke Creek and Chinkusi as a boundary got clawed back because of certain decisions that were made elsewhere. Portions of the population that were originally allocated here went to Brampton, about 2,000 persons. Portions of the area that we were dealing with for jobs in other parts of Mayfield or other parts of Caledon weren't living up to the densities of 50 persons and jobs. We had warehouses, 3 jobs to the acre. The effect was that you had to make it up in Mayfield West by being more dense. And by being more dense, you had to retract the boundaries because the population and jobs that we had assigned here both shrank in terms of the absolute number and also had to become denser to make up for Tullamore, for example, with the low-density jobs. And all of that was understood to be a temporary situation. And it resulted after a long history. And the history started well before the growth plan. It goes back to prior to 97, when there was an OMB hearing establishing OPA 114, which in Caledon's case, they've always called the Trinodal Growth Strategy. And it established a growth area around Mayfield that goes up to Old School Road. And that was always the plan, is to have a logical edge, ultimately Old School Road, both sides of here, Ontario. In 2005, ROPA 17 established the Mayfield West study area. And then ROPA 24, which was a regional growth plan conformity exercise, allocated population to this area. And it was that population I was previously explaining to you. But when it came time to implement it through 226, we bumped into this problem that, well, you're not living up to the growth plan densities, you're going to have to make it up. And the effect of it was that the final approval was that boundary I showed you. Then along came Amendment 2 to the growth plan. Well, the growth plan originally issued in 2006 allowed us the flexibility to plan things separately from where we were dealing with intensification or other things that would have impacted. All you had to do was provide for intensification to occur at a level that was consistent with the growth plan, and then you would have the residual amount of the population you're allocated to be distributed to greenfields. The greenfields that we were talking about here were in Caledon, were in Bolton, and in Mayfield primarily. Amendment 2 came along, did the same thing, but it bumped the population up in Caledon, or sorry, not in Caledon, in Peel, by 130,000 persons for 2031. The province missed when they did their population forecasting for this region by 130,000 people for 2031. Our clients, and I've listed them on my letter, thought, well, that's the relief we need. We'll get some of that, but we can't get it until it's allocated to Caledon. Then along came the...
Don, if you could quickly summarize.
Yes,
'cause you
along
are over
came
time.
the new growth plan, which has restricted you.
All right. All in favor of extending the time?
Thank you very much. I
Carried.
was running out of wind there.
All right.
When the new growth plan came along in 2017, it changed the rules. We had always thought that through the Amendment 2, the rules were the same. They didn't change any of the policies when it came out. All they did is change the numbers. And we could continue to grow in this community as had been expected. What your staff are reporting on now is the differences between what we had before and the new growth plan, which says you have to bundle everything together. And as you heard from your staff, that's going to take at least 2 years to get the region in shape. Then the local municipality has to move on and amend their plans to bring them into conformity. So it's a lot more than 2 years we're talking about to correct this situation. That's the concern we have. We have an illogical line that was never meant to be, and we have to wait years to find a way to correct it. One of the things that you asked about in your earlier reporting back that staff are bringing is what does it mean with the GTA West Corridor? To this area, it means nothing. We're not impacted by it. It's not a barrier here. It doesn't impact the decision-making. This is a community that has been planned. The red line you see running through it is totally illogical. Storm ponds that are needed for phase 1, or in stage 1, are outside of it. They're up in the area that you see in the light blue, adjacent to the Etobicoke Creek, where they logically have to be for an outfall. Roads aren't complete. Parks are distributed inappropriately. Storm ponds in some areas are intended to serve the larger area, and they're going to have to be oversized and never get access to. You know what the effect of this is ultimately? Is it's an incomplete community. And we are all told as planners, plan for complete communities. That's not what we're creating here. So in our view, there is a way through this, and it's basically as your staff have recommended, that the process has to be more flexible to allow for the completion of something like this. This is clearly a situation that can be best described as a consequence that was not anticipated by the growth plan. And when you have unintended consequences, usually there's ways to remedy it. And the remedies often are actually built into the legislation where you can speak to cabinet or you can speak to the minister, or you can have some kind of way to sort of rationalize something that wasn't intended. And I can only think of this circumstance as being one of a kind because I work throughout the rest of the GTA and I'm doing work in all of the growth plan implementation work, and I can't think of a single circumstance that's like this. It's that different, and it needs special attention. Mr. Chairman, I tried to keep it for 5 minutes. It's a complicated subject, as I said. I hope that was sufficient to give you a heads up on what you're going to read from staff. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. If you just stay in place, I have Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Given. I think the first question was originally, if you bring up your first plan where you'd have your first
I'm
slide.
not quite sure if I can do this.
You can
Let
bring
me
up,
try
there we are, perfect.
Okay.
That's going to work real well. You're right about the complete community, but originally we were going to have our own public information meeting strictly on this, and then it was tied with Ninth Line, and then it was broken apart and how did we get lumped together with the rest of it, I guess is the question. And I think that's where we got caught up in the highway corridor, correct?
Started, I think, with the corridor being an issue, but it also had to do with the growth plan material that has been issued on how to basically plan for the next round of growth, which your staff have spoken to in their report, which requires that you look at the intensification requirements throughout the entire region. You're going to have to plan for all those transit stops throughout the entire region. You're going to have to deal with your master planning for infrastructure. You're going to have to deal with the land use requirements that go with that, all of which is to be bundled together at one time through one amendment to the region's official plan. and it's led by the region as opposed to in the past, where municipalities had the ability to allocate the population themselves internally, which in this region is unusual in that both Mississauga and Brampton were already fully allocated prior to the growth plan, and it was only Caledon that got caught, and Caledon's history was that they chose to allocate growth to Mayfield, and now you were looking at in October in the staff report of allocating growth to Bolton, some of which is 2031 numbers that came out of the 2031B number, and some of it goes to 2041.
Mr. Chairman, where I'm going with my next question here is, what it hasn't been mentioned is to do this complete community, the challenge is trying to get financing borrowed to make all this work for the infrastructure that has to go in. It's a miss for Peel Region, especially on our infrastructure side, not having this included. What I'm asking today is, could we just have a public meeting, because the work has been done this far, it's due for a public meeting. Can we just have a public meeting just strictly on this?
So that
I'd like to
question's
move that.
to staff.
Yeah.
Jeanette?
Through the chair to council. Those types of questions, we've kind of got answered in the presentation we're bringing in 2 weeks. So I don't know whether you want me to get in to start
No.
answering pieces of it or wait till we have the whole presentation.
Well, the challenge is, it should have been by itself in the first place. It got lumped together. All I'm saying is, can we not just pull it apart just because of the complication of everything else?
I'm really,
Actually, Mayor Thompson, I'm just going to interrupt for a sec. I think any questions you have pertaining to the growth plan, I would ask that you refer them to staff to come, to make sure it's
Well,
included in the
I
presentation.
understand that, but I think that's what I'll ask, but I think that's what the delegation was asking for is, you know,
Well, we got a meeting on the 26th, and he's invited to come back, so we'll deal with it then.
well, we helped out the ninth line, and we need help here.
Councillor Sprovieri, questions to the
Yes,
delegate?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Don, can you just explain, you said that the province missed out or miscalculated 130,000 population number in your presentation. Can you expand on that, how they did that, and where that 130,000 has gone or is going or will be going?
I can't explain how they did that because they can't explain it. But I can tell you that the 130,000 was the largest of the differences across the entire GTA in the forecasting. Regions like Durham, York, Halton, all were very close when the growth plan number 2, amendment number 2 came out. But in this region's case, the difference was 130,000. Most others was in the range of 20,000. A lot of it came to, as a result of, as I understand it, a misunderstanding of the size of the population that you have per unit in this region, which is higher than most. Some of it came as a result, I think, of just a bad understanding of what was going on here at the time they were forecasting. The impact of it, if I could, though, is that if that 2031B number is not used in this time, you will fall short of meeting the goals of the growth plan. The growth plan mandated that you achieve that 2031 number. And we can't get the land opened up to get there.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Councillor Groves, question to the
Yep,
delegate.
thank you. The 2031B numbers, my understanding, Mr. Givens, is that there is no 2031B. It's 2031A, which have been allocated, and now 2041. So I'm going to ask, Mr. Chair, that some of these things, and I'm sure it's in that report, that staff take note of these things and have a full explanation to this council on those numbers, because I think there's a whole bunch of confusion around it. The other thing that I will say, to answer Mayor Thompson's
No,
comment.
it's out of
Sorry.
order.
Okay. The ninth line, Mr. Givens, maybe you can answer this. It's my understanding that ninth line is part of the 2031A allocation. Is that correct?
I don't have an opinion on the ninth line. I'm here to speak about Mayfield. I don't want to get drawn into
Okay, so I'm just going to put it because the comment was made, and maybe staff can also report back on that and make some clarification, because I think we all need to understand so that it's not all confusing for us. With respect to the storm ponds, Mr. Givens, and the road, are you able to put that through in stage one? Like, are you able to cross, when you look at the map and where the ponds need to go, are you able to do that?
Could we use this, maybe you could just help me understand where your point is?
So I think you said the servicing that you need for stage one requires ponds and all that stuff. And are the ponds in stage two? Is that where the
Yes,
lands
and
are
if-
to do?
Yes, if I could, now I understand your question. The light blue that you see to the north along the Etobicoke Creek is where the lands naturally drain to, and those ponds can be built in those locations. They are within the green belt, but they are on tableland, and infrastructure is a permitted use within the green belt.
Right. Yep. Okay. Okay, so I guess, Mr. Chair, I'm sure this is something in the report, but I wanted to just get some clarification. You're asking today, your ask is then to have this as part of the MCR or as part of stage one. Is that what you're asking?
I'm not asking that it be part of stage one. I'm asking that the process that you go through allow for this area to be completed. And the way to do that is to request the province to give you the flexibility to do so without waiting for the MCR process to be completed.
Okay, so, and my question is, do we need an MCR for that?
I'm not sure that you do, and I think that's where your staff have to have discussions with the province. You have started you started an MCR previously.
Right.
To implement amendment number 2 to the growth plan. That was never concluded. It was interrupted by the 2017 growth plan. I believe you have an argument to make that that process you were embarked on with amendment number 2 can be completed.
Okay, so, thank you. Well, hopefully when staff comes back, they can come back with those clarifications so that we understand it, because I don't understand it, and I know there are a lot of changes in that. There are a lot of moving parts going on right now. GTA West Corridor, now the province with this draft MCR
Councillor
guidelines,
Groves,
so, yeah.
staff have heard the questions, so
Okay,
they'll be
thank you.
prepared. Councillor Raz.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming today, Mr. Givens. It's a good education, and we look forward to the staff report. My question, you're a seasoned planner, correct? You've been doing this a while.
That's very polite,
Okay.
yes.
In your opinion, what would the ramifications be if we went ahead with the original plan?
The original plan with the red line that you're...
With the one that goes to the creek, because when we
Oh.
talk about building complete communities, these arbitrary lines are a little bit baffling. We'll get into that at a different meeting. But what if the town of Caledon went ahead and did originally as designed?
I don't think that Caledon has the latitude to do that, unfortunately. I think that would be the logical thing to do. I think that Caledon would love to have the latitude to make that decision. But you have to work within the process that has been prescribed by the region through the implementation of the growth plan, which says we only have so much population that you can work with here. And until we can get some more population here, and we need about 8,000 persons, somewhere in that range, to be allocated to this area, so that plan can be completed. It's not a big number.
Thank you very much, and I'll be asking similar questions to staff when they come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Downey.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Seeing as we've deferred all of the growth management pieces, I'd like to move referral of Mr. Given's correspondence and ask that staff be directed to respond to the questions within the correspondence, specifically to the implications of a public meeting and implications of the municipalities moving forward without provincial approval. And then, to have those answers back to us on the 26th when we look at everything altogether.
Okay, could I have a seconder for that? Mayor Thompson? Councillor Parrish to the motion? Oh, okay. The motion then, as presented, requires a recorded vote. So I'll call on that now. That carries. Thank you. Councillor Parrish.
Follow up on Councillor Rass's question. She didn't go as far as I was hoping she would. The question she and I were discussing, what would happen? This is a good one. If the city or the town of Caledon just went ahead and said, okay, guys, here's your building permits, start building, what would the province do?
I don't know. I don't think they've ever had a situation where they've had to step in and show whether they've got the backbone to do something. I don't know how the region would even react, though, because, the region has a role in this. So I don't
What would
know.
a penalty be? We're going to get a slap on the wrist?
Well, you have to approve plans of subdivision. The region has a role in that. You have to approve zoning bylaws. There's appeal processes the province can step into for both of those. There's a secondary plan amendment that the province could appeal.
No. See, what you're answering me all the good rules.
Well, I didn't say there were good rules, but.
No, well, you're answering me on process. What
Yes.
I'm asking you, let's say the region lost its mind for a minute and said, yeah, we're going to just give out the permits, go ahead, start building, and wait and see what happens. What are they going to do? Demolish the houses?
I don't know what they would do to the region. I know they'd probably put my client in jail.
In jail? Seriously, jail?
Look, there are significant penalties if you do things that are not approved through the proper process. And they usually land on the landowner's shoulders, not on the municipalities.
Okay, good to know.
All right. Thank you very much for your presentation. Once again, look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Move receipt of the delegation, moved by Councillor Parrish, second by Councillor Thompson. All in favor of receipt of the delegation? Carried. Thank you. Items related to Public Works, there was one held. Councillor Starr, if you, oh, he's not here, sorry. Councillor Groves, if you, Councillor Groves, if you chair this section.
Sure.
Item 10.3 was held, I believe.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of, are we in committee? Also, we have one item under Public Works, and that is 10.3, and I think Councillor Raz, you're on the board, I think you held it.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Question to staff is, this sounds more like just an administrative function that we're required to under the Act, but is it something that can be a delegated authority to the lower tier municipality? Because we, like in the city of Mississauga, we have our own weed bylaws and inspectors and stuff. I'm just wondering, in terms of duplication of efforts, if that can be a delegated authority to the lower tier.
I'm looking over to legal to
Okay.
answer that question because I don't know.
No, regrettably, the statute calls for appointment by the upper tier municipality, and our delegation authorities don't extend to delegating to the lower tier. It could conceivably be something that get delegated to staff in terms of bringing it to council. We could take a look at that if you like.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I know that in the city of Mississauga, we already deal with the weed issue, so I'm sure it's not a labor-intensive process at the region, but there might be some synergies there. That's all. Maybe, can I refer it back to staff then, just to get a little bit more information on? Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I think that concludes no communication. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Groves, can I interrupt for a second?
Yes.
for clarification, that's, you want to refer back to staff for further information on that aspect, but are you asking that the report actually be referred? Because it's appointing the weed inspectors. Perhaps we could, okay.
Yeah.
So that we need a recorded vote for the
Okay.
10-3.
Thank you. This one. I think she put it on your desk. Okay. So the vote carries. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Items related to human services have all been dealt with under the So items related to enterprise programs and services. Councillor Fonseca, if you chair this section, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So 16.2 is the 2017 Operating Financial Triennial Performance Report, and we do have a presentation. Good morning.
Good morning. I love it when I'm the highlight of the day.
Don't flatter yourself, Norm.
Oh, yeah, I suppose I may not be. That could be the big disappointment for today. I'm Norm Lum, Director of Business and Financial Planning. I'm here with Jeff McRae to present the year-end financial results for 2017. So overall, we have good news to share with Regional Council. On an overall budget gross expenditures of $1.8 billion in 2017, there was a variance of $23 million, or 2.3% relative to the net tax levy of $1 billion. So within the target range of plus or minus 3%. $5.6 million of the variance was from external agencies, so Peel Regional Police, OPP, Conservation Authorities, and MPAC. The remaining $17.4 million in variance was from regionally controlled programs, which represents 3.1% of the net tax budget of $560 million and a gross budget of $1.3 billion. So the variance of $17.4 million was largely due to a combination of unplanned revenue and cost savings, partially offset by higher than budgeted costs in some key areas. So starting on the left side, as reported to Council this past November, recent changes in WSIB legislation have enabled individuals previously on long-term disability to apply for WSIB. The number of claims increased for traumatic and chronic mental stress disorder. So we made an adjustment for the 2018 budget, and we'll continue to monitor and reassess for the 2019 budget. As mentioned through the 2018 budget presentations and through a report to Council on October, staff was projecting an increased demand in accessible transportation trips. And although the 2018 budget reflected resources to meet this demand, the trend to increase is expected to continue. Another area that resulted in negative variance was tax revenue. A number of significant tax appeals, so big box stores, Canadian Tire, Home Depot, and Centennial Mall, were successful, in addition to writing off of historical accounts that were deemed uncollectible. On the positive side, looking to the right half of the screen, we experienced some significant revenue variances. So in the waste program, China's National Sword Campaign, which resulted in lower fiber revenue because it raised the standard for fiber content, but that was offset by increased commodity revenue due to higher market prices. So in addition, Peel received provincial funding for childcare, which staff were able to maximize and apply to existing services and replace regional property tax dollars, freeing up dollars that we could use to support other services in Peel. With respect to costs, I want to highlight two services that experienced some significant savings: waste and roads. The waste service negotiated a better yard waste processing contract, which resulted in lower costs and the road service had under expenditures largely due to delays in implementation of the red light camera program and savings in road maintenance, including lower fuel costs. A service that continues to be challenged is the rent supplement program. Staff are finding that there are fewer and fewer units that qualify or meet Peel's criteria. So generally speaking, the rent supplement program has limits on rents it will subsidize, but staff are looking at alternative approaches that the program may use to expand the number of units available. So overall, ongoing variance analysis continues to provide insight into our future budgets, and our year-end surpluses provide Peel with additional financial flexibility. And now I'll shift over to the utility rate programs, which include water and wastewater. Overall, a positive budget variance of $7.1 million was experienced on gross budgeted expenditures of $368 million, and this represents a variance of 1.9% relative to a net base of $360.6 million, well within the targeted range of plus or minus 3%. Overall, the variance was due to higher revenues and Peel surcharge fees. The increase was largely due to an increase in the number of companies that were charged charge fees, and it also included retroactive surcharge fees to Toronto and York. As Council may recall, it approved lowering the utility rate increase to 4.3% from 5%, not long after the 2017 budget was approved, to recognize the impact of the provincial legislation on electricity prices. Over and above that, Peel experienced lower electricity costs driven by the global adjustment, which lowered overall electricity rates further, with chemical costs also coming in under budget. Before I get to staff recommendations, I want to provide Council with a status update on its rate stabilization reserves, also known as working fund reserves. So overall, the reserves are in a healthy state. The tax rate stabilization reserve is at 11.5% of the total 2018 tax-supported regionally controlled budget. The additional reserves provide flexibility to Council to address priorities. For example, in 2016, Council approved transferring $50 million to support affordable housing. And for 2017, the Working Fund Reserve balance will enable the reduction of debt financing for the Seniors Health and Wellness Village. The Utility Rate Stabilization Reserve is at 7.3% of the 2018 utility rate supported budget, within the guidelines of the reserve management policy, and sufficient to mitigate swings in water consumption due to changing weather patterns. So given that Peel's working funds are healthy, staff are making the following recommendations. Firstly, in 2017, Council approved the Seniors Health and Wellness Village and financing for it, which included tax-supported debt. Therefore, staff are recommending that the tax-supported surplus of $17.4 million be allocated to reduce the future debt financing required, identified as up to $30 million. And secondly, that the utility rate surplus of $7.1 million be allocated to the utility rate capital reserves to support the state of good repair of Peel's water and wastewater infrastructure, which, as identified through the 2018 budget, had a funding shortfall of $1.4 billion over the next 20 years. So now we'll provide a status update on Peel's capital program. At the beginning of 2017, there were capital works in progress of $3.1 billion. So over the course of 2017, $650 million in capital work was completed by year-end, and this included $65 million returned to reserves, and included projects such as the sewer twinning in East Brampton and West Trunk in Brampton, the Aloha Reservoir and Pumping Station, and land acquisition for the anaerobic digestion facility. This left an ending work in progress balance of $2.4 billion. And examples of the work still in progress include the Daniels project in affordable housing, the Seniors Health and Wellness Village, and the Hanlon feeder main. So although Peel has over 1,200 projects on the go at any one point in time, the majority of those projects take a number of years to complete. So on average, it takes 3 to 5 years to complete a project because they are very large or very complex, and sometimes both. Projects like the ones I just mentioned on the previous slide. To ensure that they are progressing as planned, The capital projects are monitored and reported on a regular basis, with additional focus on top 25 largest projects, which represent half of the total value of the total work in progress. But overall, for 2017, 97% of the capital plan progressed as planned. To summarize, throughout 2017, while facing changes in the economy, commodity markets, and legislative environment, the region continued to deliver services to meet the needs of the residents and businesses of a growing community. The surplus actions are in line with Peel's long-term financial planning strategy, as they support financial flexibility, vulnerability, and sustainability. One additional note, so when the triennial report was written, the results for the Peel Regional Police hadn't been reported to the Police Services Board yet. The results are now public. The recommendation from the board is to allocate its surplus of $5.4 million to its facilities reserve to support future infrastructure needs. This concludes my presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Norm. Thank you very much for the presentation. Very informative. We do have the list. Councillor Rouse.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Norm. Thanks for being funny at the beginning. Financial guys aren't supposed to be. I'm kidding. I will give credit where credit is due, and to have an operating budget, over $2 billion and come in at about 2.2% with a variance, so I think that's well done, so congratulations to all involved. A question on the rent supplements, and I don't know if you can answer this, or perhaps Janice. I was just chatting with Councillor Parrish a few minutes ago, and I noticed, or I saw on CBC the other day, that the rents are going up 11% because the new rules that have come in through the province with respect to real estate transactions. So when we examine the rental units, is it based on the cost of those units that we provide the rent supplements, or is it their income? So are we handcuffing ourselves because of the changes that the province has implemented?
So through the chair, no, we aren't handcuffing ourselves. The rent supplement is basically a top-up. So we take a look at what your ability is to afford rent. Usually you pay about 30%, and then we top up the rest to the market unit rent cost. We also have housing allowances, though, as well, which are fixed. So in those cases, we would be putting clients at a bit of a disadvantage when the rents go up because their housing allowance stays at that fixed amount. But by and large, the rent supplements give us a lot of flexibility.
Okay, are we seeing a big jump in rents in this area? I know that vacancy rates are very low, but where we're seeing the 905 rents going, I know that the article I saw was specific to Toronto.
So we are seeing an increase in rents, but what is proving to be more challenging is that we are finding private landlords don't want to work with us because their vacancy rate is so low, they can just fill their units with no issues and no administration related to working with us.
Okay, so I guess other policies of unintended consequences are having effect. A quick question on the waste management line. We collected an additional 35,000 tons of waste. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Is that due to any one particular area? I know that we've started going out in the townhouses, but is it because of the new program we're starting to see even more results? Because it really surpasses our target, which is great.
Yeah, through the chair, I don't think we'd have any specific information to say it's a particular geographic area, but just in case, I'll go back and check with staff, and if I do have that information, I'll share it.
Okay. Last question for Norm. With respect to the write-offs, do we get a report to council for the write-offs? I know I think I've seen them for the tax appeals, but I can't recall seeing for the write-offs. Is that included?
I don't recall. I'll defer to Steve.
That's actually, the summary level is just embedded in this report.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Parrish.
Yeah, I just noticed in the paper this morning an article, whereas on Toronto blue bin system is on the ropes. And it suggests that China is shutting the door to some waste sales, which is going to affect them immensely. It warned of a projected 9.2 million plunge this year in recycling revenues. And the big problems are black plastic commonly used for takeout, which I thought you could put in recycling and have been doing so. Plastic-lined paper coffee cups, which I knew better, and food waste left in jars. When it gets into the big trucks and breaks, it contaminates the whole load. Are we concerned that we're having those sorts of things here in Peel?
Through the chair to all members of council, China soared, and the change that China and now other countries are doing is having a significant impact on the entire country and North America. So we've been working with Canada Fibers Limited. Council gave me some extra authority in December to tweak some things to address it, but it's not a short-term issue. This is the new reality. So I will be coming to council, we're targeting June, with outcomes of what those short-term solutions have resulted in and what we're recommending on a go-forward basis and what the financial impact is, because certainly the revenue we will be getting will be a lot less.
What I'm more concerned about, the revenue is very important, but to contaminate a whole truckload with a half a jar of mayonnaise is just unbelievable. And I don't know if we're pushing people to recycle that don't really want to. We're better off to leave them doing their garbage in the garbage than contaminating a whole truckload of stuff because they don't know what they're doing.
Again, through the chair, we're bringing a report to Waste Management Committee at mid-May and talking about the contamination and what we're proposing.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for the report. You weren't funny, but you were good.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Parrish. Councillor Sprovieri.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions. Last year, when we had the report, we were told that the industrial employment DC was not collection was not being achieved as anticipated. Has that changed in this year's situation? Are we? Are we? Not, because, as you know, we borrowed a lot of money to put in the infrastructure, and some of that money, some of those funds were supposed to come from the industrial sector, employment sector.
Through the chair, I'll pass that to Steve. It's not a variance relative to the tax or utility rate budget, so I'll defer to Steve.
And through the chair, we are bringing forward a report on our DC performance shortly, but it will demonstrate again that the changing nature of employment really is affecting the level of DC revenues that we're receiving for the non-residential sector. But that report should be coming in May.
And through the chair, will that address on how we make up that shortfall, the report?
The work that we're doing on growth management, that council's doing with growth management, that is part of the work that we're doing to try to look at how do we mitigate the risks associated with planning to provincial numbers and not realizing those numbers.
Okay. The other question I had, just through the chair, you mentioned electrical consumption. Have we converted our lighting system to LEDs throughout the regional buildings yet?
Lorraine.
Through the chair, we are in the process of converting our lighting to LED. Sorry, my voice.
So we are converting all our buildings and facilities?
Gradually over time, yes, but we have been converting, and we're doing it in some of our long-term care facilities as well.
Has this office been done, this chambers yet?
These have not yet been done, no.
Yeah, because I still feel the heat.
Yeah.
And LEDs don't give up heat, I noticed. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, for the presentation. If Councillor Ross, Councillor Parrish, if you could move the presentation, and this is a recorded vote as well, correct?
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, Councillor Ross, you held 16.7 Regional Chair Election Compliance Audit Committee.
Thank you. Just a quick question with respect to the per diems. I'm assuming that we've never had to have this committee for, and I know that there is a scan of other municipalities. Who's my question to? Lorraine, I guess. So this is in line. Do we need to pay people on a per diem? And what do you think the ultimate costs are going to be of this function now that we have to elect a regional chair?
Through the chair, I'm going to ask the clerk to answer that.
Okay. Hello, Catherine.
You're correct. This is the first time we've had to have this committee. I have asked at the locals what their experience has been with this committee, because every municipality that has an election has to have one. And it literally depends on the number of audits that are required. So it really can vary from 0, when there's nothing brought forward, to more significant than that if it gets into a large number of compliance audit requirements.
Okay. I know there's so many new little nuanced rules that are coming up, and we've learned about quite a few in the last few days. So this is going to be a learning curve for us all. Thank you very much.
For us too.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Unica.
Thank you. My question was, to the extent to which we can, and I'm not sure on the legislation, can we piggyback on the local government and their process for running an election? Because it's really the same election, just with another name on it. Why rebuild the wheel and have to spend all that money? Can we just send some observers? Or I think a lot of taxpayers would say, they know how to run an election in Caledon. They know how to run one in Brampton. We've got to rebuild the wheel and have our own observers for one more name. So I'm just afraid we're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. So could you give me some comfort that we overlap wherever we can and we take advantage of the existing system?
Absolutely, we have done that. The actual day of voting, we are going to have virtually nothing to do with it until we get reported with the results.
Very
So
good.
we're supporting where we can the locals with, meeting with school boards about PA days and things like that. So we're working with all 3 municipalities to try to create as many efficiencies as possible. What the region is really going to be responsible for is the before and after voting day, and that's by legislation, where we'll be taking the nominations here, but only for chair. Councillors, region or local, will run where the system's already in place at the local municipalities.
Very good. Thank
So-
you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And we'll move by Councillor Ross, seconded by Councillor Unica, and it's a recorded vote. That passes unanimously, and back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Brings us to other business. Councillor Sato, with respect to portable signs.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council will recall that we had a committee that looked at the expense policy, and through that, we made quite a few changes to the expense policy, one of which was that going forward, once a fee was established, we would be paying for the mobile signs, portable signs staff installed for us. I've discussed this with the chair of the committee and other members of the committee, and it was our understanding that the fees would be charged retroactively once council approved what the fee would be. This month, we received in our expense statements that we were asked to sign a fee that we had not established for the use of portable signs over the last couple of months. And when I questioned it, I said, Council has not established a fee, and we've been waiting for a report to come to Council so that we could look at recommendations from staff and also experience of what it would cost for outside providers. And that report has still not come. It's been 3 months. The report has not come forward. And staff, in an email to me, said that they had established a fee. And the reason that they say they can establish a fee, because I said, well, you have no authority to do that. Only council can establish fees, is that in the motion, the wording read, a fee, once a fee or a price list. So staff have taken it upon themselves to include this fee on our expenses under a price list, which is an internal charge that we knew nothing about. We had no consultation with council, although that was our expectation and I feel was very clear direction both at the committee meetings and at the council meeting. And when it came forward, staff gave me, there's two issues here. One is that I'm still waiting for that report to come forward, and no amount should be charged until council approves what that will be. So I want direction for that report to come forward, and once we have approved a fee for the use, then that can go back retroactively onto the account. I'm not as much worried about the cost. I have lots of money in my budget to pay for the mobile signs. That's not the issue. The issue of one is who has the authority to set fees and charges, and that is council. The second issue is staff sent me a list saying, well, we established the fee at $170 because that's what it costs the region of Peel to install a mobile sign. A big red flag went up on that because when we book a mobile sign through the contractor that the city has authorized, we pay $75. So the fact that it is costing, and I got this breakdown of costs for the number of staff, depreciation of the trucks, the signs, everything else, which depreciation, by the way, for installing one sign is $30 per sign, which I'd like to know where that one came from. But if it is costing the region of Peel taxpayers $170 every time staff goes out and puts up a mobile sign, then I would like to see us get rid of all the signs that we own, get rid of the program, and go to an outside provider that we already know can provide the service for $75, which is less than 50% of what it is currently costing the taxpayers. So two issues here, Mr. Chairman. One is the issue of the fee, which is still to come to council. And I had this discussion with Catherine this morning, who says that because it's an internal charge, not external, that staff has the authority to set the amount. I dispute that. I think it was very clear that, and I have discussed it with the chair of the committee, Councillor Parrish, and it was our understanding that the amount would come back to council and we would determine what it is. And if council determined it would be $170, then that's fine, but we did not. And the second is I would like a report to come forward with all of the information that staff gave me, and I would really like an explanation as to why we've been paying $170 to install a mobile sign when it can be done for $75. I cannot justify that at all, and I think we need to take a look at that program. And it looks to me, just on the face of it, that outsourcing is going to save the taxpayers about $100 every time. And I'd like to know what the monthly or the annual difference would be on the budget for that. So two issues, Mr. Chairman, and I would like it to be direction to staff to bring those reports. The one on the fee that was directed, that we've been waiting for, and one on the program itself.
I would prefer that, or may I suggest that it would be put in
I'll put it in a motion.
motion to refer to staff,
I'll put in a motion
to bring
for the
back a
reports.
report, to include that. Okay. Councilor Medeiros, you're up next. Would you second that?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, great.
And just along the line, just something really minor through the chair, is also when we were deciding what's offered in terms of signs is based on availability. It's one thing when I get a sign on an arterial road, which is on Steeles, and there's value there. It's another thing when they tell me that they have to put it on the side street because they couldn't get a major artery. So I'm paying the exact same price,
Yeah.
but, so, which doesn't make sense because it's one thing on a side street, which, you know, I really didn't need in the first place, but community organizations or through events, or downtown BIA, and I accept it. So I just think there has to be a little bit of that also consideration on location and where you're having it. So when you're telling me that's $175 to put on Steeles and it's the same
But
thing
anyway.
in the side street, just there's a disconnect.
I would ask that staff report back on that as well. Councillor Fonseca.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, basically my concern was already raised by
Councillor
Councillor
Gibson.
Deers, but, okay.
Thanks. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, it's no secret that I've said all along that I hate these things. They're ugly, they're no good, that we shouldn't have them at all. But since this council decides that we are going to use them, I'd like to ask staff if they're going to report back to talk about permits for them too, because anybody else has to have permits, has to go through the permit process to put signs up. And it seems like, I'm not sure we actually follow that, at least in the city of Brampton. I don't know what Mississauga does or Caledon does. It's an unfair advantage in my perspective that a council member can put these things up. We went through a whole process a few years ago in Brampton about these type of signs. At the time, I said in Brampton that it's unfair that the Region Appeals are allowed to put these signs up, yet other people aren't, and they should be scrapped, but I was overruled by our own council in Brampton too. So I'd like some more details on that. And I'd like staff to have the opportunity to talk about the maybe not today, but when it comes back, the true cost of what these are. Because, yeah, you can go out and get somebody else to put them, but they're not exactly the same type of signs either that we have in the Region Appeal. There's a difference in some of them that are being put up by general contractors and what's being put up by the city. And I'm only speaking for Brampton's perspective, because I don't know what happens in Mississauga or Caledon. But sometimes we have found that where they're being put up by the region takes in consideration the safety of them where they get put up. But a general contractor doesn't necessarily, and we had some issues years ago in Brampton on that too. So if we're going to refer it back, let's get all the details on it. Let's have a real good discussion about them, because from my perspective, they're ugly, they're unsafe, and they shouldn't be up at all. Thank you.
We'll ask that that information be included as well. Thank you. Councillor Parrish.
Well, first of all, I'd like to endorse what Councillor Sato said. We did have all those conversations, so she's absolutely correct, and I'm glad to hear a report will come back. Secondly, I agree with Councillor Gibson. We had a bad windstorm about 6 months ago, not the one last week, and all those black signs were blown over. And they stayed blown over I watched one on Mavis Road, it was down for like 14 days. And what happens is the steel poles stick up in the air, and a kid going by on a bike could just be killed if they fell off at that spot. So they are, number one, ugly, number two, unsafe, number three, not maintained properly. In Mississauga, we have a huge roadmap that shows all the locations where you're allowed to put signs, whether they're private ones rented or they're region or they're city. And I asked if we could sink permanent catch things in there, so you come along and just plunk the sign in and go away, and it's locked in place. And I was told it was crazy expensive. So I'm wondering if it is so expensive, and I'm going to ask our staff again in Mississauga if we could phase them in and start putting them in. And they won't be those ugly black things. They'll be, the ones I've seen that they do have a nice chrome edge or silver metal edge to them, and they just fit right into holders in the ground, and they're in there permanently until they're released, and they're in cement bases. So I don't know if the region has a better shot at checking this out than the city did, but we were just told it would cost too much. So maybe if we did it for the whole region and we phased them in, it might be a cost reducer.
Staff's making a list of what's coming back in the report. Thanks. Councillor Palacio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor Parrish, for leading right into what I wanted to ask. I think probably Councillor Nika is going to shake his head because we're in so much business as it is. I agree with a lot of the comments that have been made here. At the City of Brampton, we've looked at kind of advertising spaces and opportunities to get some more revenue in the City of Brampton. And here's a perfect example of something that's ugly, gets plopped up every time, we want to make an announcement in strategic areas. When we know where the strategic areas are, can we include in this report something to come back to us with respect to a more permanent sign, and also opportunities to put advertising on when we're not using them, to see if we can get some kind of cost offset to that? I think that's, would capture a lot of the comments that have been made around the table, and opportunity, really. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sato.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chair. I also neglected to add that I would like to see the charges that have been put on our expense accounts, the unapproved fee, removed until council has decided what the fee is, and then you can go back in and put whatever we approve retroactively. I'm not signing my statement because I didn't approve that fee, and it's just a matter of principle on that one. So I would just like to see it, because I know there are other members of council that have it on their expense accounts that were shocked as I was.
Yeah, I think they should, I would suggest exclude it until they come back with a report, and then we establish a fee. Okay. So there's a motion of referral back to staff with a list of things to come back with respect to portable signs, moved by Councillor Sato, second by Councillor Palashi, or Madeiros, sorry, Madeiros, yeah. All in, I guess record a vote on that, please. That carries. Bylaws. Okay. Have motion moved by Councillor Palashi, seconded by Councillor Parrish, that bylaws listed on the Regional Council agenda being bylaws 18-2018 to 21-2018 inclusive be given the required number of readings, taken as read, signed by the Regional Chair and the Regional Clerk, and the corporate seal be affixed thereto. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. In camera, I don't know if we need to go into camera on this. Are you okay, Councillor Kovac? All right. That brings us to the bylaw with respect to that. Moved by Councillor Kovac, seconded by Councillor Fonseca, that the recommendation contained within the confidential report relating to item 21.1 and related bylaw being bylaw 22-2018 listed on the April 12, 2018 regional agenda be approved and become public upon adoption. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Moved by Councillor Mahoney, seconded by Councillor Moore, that bylaw 23-2018 to confirm the proceedings of Regional Council at its meeting held on April 12, 2018, and to authorize the execution of documents in accordance with the Region Appeal bylaws related thereto be given the required number of readings, taken as read, signed by the Regional Chair and the Regional Clerk, and the corporate seal be affixed thereto. All in favor? Carried. And motion moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Sprovieri, that the April 12, 2018 Regional Council meeting be adjourned. All in favor? Opposed, of any? Carried. Thank you. Go.